Hello, everybody, and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap on January the 4th of 2017. It's a new year, and how else to ring in the new year but by looking back to the past and not looking at the future at all.
And learning nothing from it, Nick.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I intend to repeat every mistake I made. Perhaps double the mistakes. Repeat the same mistake twice even. So I don't even learn from the history of learning from my first history. I'm looking forward to it, Nick. Should be pretty fun. I think I'm going to start titling all of our episodes with big spoilers for major manga in the title for all the people who are still following by the anime.
What was it?
It was I spoiled who Toby was.
Toby is Obito. That's right.
Yeah. And
it's a classic one. It's like 3 years ago or something now.
It was our most watched episode, mostly from people who watched it and just wrote very angry messages at us. Mostly.
How dare you? It worked.
In fairness, I did deserve it. It was very dumb on my part. On the second hand,
if I remember, you launched into an apology in the next episode, and I was like, "Yeah, you fucked up."
It was just like, "I'm really sorry." But not for nothing, I've quickly learned that anime fans will not give you the time of day if you're
absolutely not.
They feel you've besmirched something they adore.
Absolutely not. No, like that is still, I think, like peak fandom. Like you're not gonna beat anything. Like, oh, you think that people get angry when you spoil Game of Thrones? No.
Well, to be fair, Benzai was also very angry at me for doing that too. So.
How dare you?
What the fuck, Chris? The worst bad guy on the planet gets killed eventually? Like, no, not for nothing, Benzai, but come on.
Somebody in Game of Thrones died?
It's the first time we've talked.
I thought they were just have sex forever.
Ben, please, we haven't talked in 4 years. Don't let this be our interaction. Oh, you're so fat and ugly and I hate you.
Well, first making fun of Benzai moment of 2017. There we go.
It's all being counted one by one. And guys, I see people who are complaining that the hitbox isn't working for them, or the chat isn't at least. Swap over to Twitch if you are having an issue, because that's the point in multi-streaming. So we're on Twitch and Hitbox. If one doesn't work, you can go to the other, and hopefully it does.
Yeah. So it's that time of year where we look back on what we've done and remember the good times, remember the bad times, and then come to a decision on what was the best and what was the worst. For the last few years, we've gone over what recommendations we liked, what recommendations we didn't like, and of course, recapped in brief what our regular series got done in the past year. We're going to have a lot of, this series ended to talk about
yes.
This time around. Usually it's been like one every other year, and this time like 3 series that we've been recapping just all ended within 3 months of each other. And so yeah, we got a lot of that to talk about, and also we've got awards to give out.
Yes, you can have the patented Weekly Manga Recap Superlative Award cup of chai tea latte that we give out. Like, so if Luffy wins an award, he can collect his chai latte award. That I'm going to be drinking throughout the show.
You're really banking on fictional characters not coming to life to claim those prizes, aren't you?
Yeah, it's going to be really important. If I had to keep giving away all my mugs because the fictional characters are like, "Hey, we won an award, give us that." I'm like, "But I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty."
That's what you want to do. That's the first thing that you're going to have to say about that. Not, Luffy, you're real.
Yeah, no, I'm like, no.
All Might, you can be my real superhero.
I'm just like, wait, I don't get to keep mine?
I'm very greedy.
Chris doesn't get his? So, where do we normally start off? I can't remember if we started off talking about the series we recapped or the recommendations. Where do we want to start?
I can't remember what order we tend to do it in.
I guess let's do the recommendations. Let's get those out of the way, because everything else relates to the recap.
Easiest. So I guess we don't actually have as many to go over this year. because of our doing JoJo's Bizarre Pokemon Adventure experience. 5 of the recommendations we did were 2 series, and which we did throughout the year. So we got through 3 series of JoJo. We got through 2 sets of Pokemon Adventure. I had a good time doing both. Some of those were some very intense, long discussions.
And I imagine that adventure isn't quite over yet, too. We've only gotten through 3 parts of 8 parts of JoJo, and I don't know how many
I have every
parts
intention
of
of us just continuing after this, yeah.
So we'll have plenty of those. But it did play a part into the fact that we didn't review as many series as I think we did the year before. But there were still actually going through the recommendations to 2016. There were several that I forgot completely, and then some that I was like, yeah, we talked about that, and that one was really cool. So I'll just run down the list we have here.
Yeah,
and we can get our thoughts on it. So we start off the year kicking off the JoJo's Bizarre Pokemon Adventure by talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood, which was your first exposure to JoJo entirely. And
had a good time, but I mean, looking back, it's definitely, especially now that I've read the 2 parts that followed it, it's like, yeah,
that's why I think it's great to read that part first, because it's really hard to go back and read it. But if it's your first exposure to anything, then it flows a lot better.
Yes.
After that, we read a porno, basically. We read Akisora.
Yeah. Accidentally took a recommendation without knowing exactly what it was, and decided to go through on it because there was at least enough to talk about to do a recap on. That is one of my favorite episodes to go back and listen to because of the hysterics that it drives us to with how incredibly terrible and stupid that series is. And honestly, I think that I'm glad that we did it.
Oh yeah, I'm. It's not an episode. I'm like, man, if we can go back in time and change it, be like, oh no, let's do it again. Before I changed it up with some of the later nominees, I actually had on the what the fuck manga moment and manga of the year was when we read that Sora's sister threatens to cut his dick off. So that just goes to show you how amazing that series is. Legitimately threatens to cut his dick off, by the way.
Yeah.
After Akisora, we talked about Snow White with the Red Hair, which was a pretty fine romance series. A little bit dry, but it was nice to see one that kind of bucked a lot of the trends we saw with like shoujo series.
It was a bit of an odd one when I saw that while going back on stuff. I was like, oh yeah, we did read that. It was something that I kind of forgotten about. And I remember liking it all right. But yeah, I agree with you. It was a bit dry and not a whole lot. I don't think there's like a moment of that series that I can point to be like, oh yeah, I remember exactly when that happened. So
yeah. The thing I think I appreciated the most was that there wasn't a lot of melodrama, which shoujo tends to get into. So that was nice. But after that, we did Ajin, which was a series about the like otherworldly kind of like monster following the kid, or he turned into it. I can't remember the exact premise.
They were immortals, and whenever they died and came back, they would summon this bizarre shadowy creature made from these particles that were only visible to other Ajin.
That's correct. Which I think we both liked, though. I think you liked a good deal more than I did.
I liked the way that they found ways to like weaponize the immortality. Like there is that scene where an entire SWAT unit is trying to kill the villain of the series, and the thing that they resort to is just killing him over and over and over again before he can react. And they do some crazy stuff to get out of it. Also, he does that suicide attack right before that, where he just uses his bullshit immortality in order to hijack the plane and then just steers into a building and then he comes back out of the wreckage.
I do remember it having some ridiculous moments like that. Following that, we did Shishunki no Iron Maiden, which was at first seemed like a very ridiculous series about like a guy who has to keep a girl's secret that she's slowly like molting into a fucking iron dragon. But beyond all that stuff, there was actually a rather earnest love story underneath. And I remember actually enjoying it a good deal.
Yeah, but we had to really look past all of the rapey stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you have to... Look, Nikki, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few rapey scenes, okay? After that was Hana Matsuri, which was, if I believe, that's the one with the mob boss who gets that comes to take care of a little girl who has crazy psychic powers.
Yeah, it's a weird comedy series about the psychic girl, and then there are a couple other psychic girls that are introduced into it
That aren't as funny and are a lot more depressing and sad.
And we had Annalise on with us to talk about that.
Mm-hmm. We had Annalise on quite a few episodes this year, too.
I think it was like 4 or 5 times throughout the year.
Because we also had her on the Snow White with the red hair, and we also had her on the Love Life episode, or not Love Life, his favorite that comes up later on this list. So we had her on plenty of episodes, and she's even in the chat right now, having recently returned from her trip to Japan. So hello, Annalise.
Hello.
Hi! Oh my god, Nick, she's here with us.
She's admitted the podcast.
I'm in your house. Why do you sound like Katori? After Hinamatsuri, we did JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2, Battle Tendency. So our first look into a more traditional look of JoJo. And followed that up with Pokemon Adventures Red and Blue.
Yep.
Much enjoyed series. Then we followed it up with a very different series for us, A Silent Voice, which was the series about the deaf girl who had a complicated relationship, we should say, with one of the kids who bullied her. And it was a very powerful story, but...
Had a very long discussion about it, too.
Yeah. It's one of the more... I think significant episodes we did this year. I think if you were looking for any of like the non-JoJo or Pokemon stuff to kind of see our thoughts on, that's probably the one you're going to get the most good discussion out of, because there was a lot to say about that one. Then we did Today Love Starts, which I don't oh wait, no, that's the one with like the super douchey guy as the love interest. The
guy who essentially sexually harasses a woman because he gets off on her being scared of him and having power over her. And then she decides that she likes it. And they start a relationship after that. Yeah.
Yeah, that one wasn't very good.
No, it wasn't.
Then we did Murcielago, which was the one with the crazy lesbian...
With the boob lesbian, yes.
The boob lesbian. Essentially, boob lesbian Deadpool was more or less what the series was.
Yeah. Okay, that's really what it boils down to. It was a fun ride, but it was not particularly great, I'll admit.
It was one of those series where I think we just had difficulties turning our like moral compass off and accepting the fact that she was just an awful person. But
basically, yes.
It's one of those ones that I think people who may not exactly match up with our taste probably would be able to find a lot of enjoyment out of, because, you know, not everyone has the exact same opinions as us. And that's one of the ones I think probably if you're into it, you're going to love it. So good one to check out there. Then we did his favorite, which was our first yaoi manga on Weekly Manga Recap. 5 years going, it only took us 5 years to review a yaoi manga, Nick. That's progressiveness right there.
And was it worth the wait?
No, it was pretty boring, if I remember correctly.
Oh, we're just kind of like, okay.
More or less. It wasn't as scandalous as I hoped it would be. Like, I guess I would just watch one too many, like, Bravo commercials. It was just like, oh, it's going to be flamboyant and all over the place. I was like, oh, it's just like a regular romance series, but with 2 dudes. This is boring.
It does also feature the best 5-word review of Love Pistols ever, because we had Annalise on that. 4-word review, I should say. I think that when I brought up, she said, "I love that garbage."
She's Annalise again is in chat, and she's saying it's barely yaoi, so let's be real. So maybe we'll review some more scandalous ones.
Shonen I. Fine.
Following that was the month in which Bleach ended. So Blogust, as we all lovingly remember it. So in honor of that, we took a look at Kubo's previous work, Zombie Powder.
And, with a period.
Yes. Fucking. And all caps, too, because it has to be that.
My one word.
Which was kind of interesting to read. I think mostly just because of the fact that we had, been reading Bleach for so long. It was just kind of interesting to see, like, oh, this is what this guy wrote, like, a decade ago or whatever. You know, it's just kind of interesting to see that look back at the past.
It was definitely something that was, if you really like Kubo, then it's essential reading, but it's interesting besides that.
Then we continued the Pokemon adventure with Gold and Silver, which was a really
Had a
fun
really long
series.
discussion about that because I don't know. I think that it was because I had a lot to gush about how much I like second generation Pokemon, but we also had to talk about how bullshit it is that nobody figures out who the villain is. Who is the mysterious mask of ice? Could it be the one guy who uses ice Pokemon?
Who doesn't hide the fact he uses them?
In very bizarre ways.
Following that, we had reached a goal, a milestone on Patreon, and did a
Very
review
important milestone.
that was long promised and long awaited, the much maligned Air Gear review. That was like a month long in the making. It was an episode where I like blew my throat out screaming about Obama in front of Congress, talking about roller skates.
That was our longest series review discussion, and we had to tear through the rest of the recap because we had been going on so long. That was a discussion that on the series that lasted more than an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was.
And we still had more to say about it afterwards.
There was not a lot of love lost for Air Gear.
No.
To say, so.
I don't think that anyone sent us hate mail about hating on Air Gear yet.
No, I've yet to see that. I feel like the Air Gear diehard community isn't out in full force anymore, but I could be wrong.
I think that they died hard, yeah.
Yeah. Following Air Gear, we went into Halloween month, where we started with Fuwan no Tane, which was a series of kind of like snippets of paranoia put into a short story format.
That might have been our shortest discussion of the year.
Yeah, it was a kind of tough series to talk about when it's like, hey, like you ever had a scene where like a feeling like you're gonna reach into a room to turn on the light, and then like you're like, what if a hand grabbed my hand? And it's like, oh, well, the manga did that. It doesn't tell you what happens afterwards, just does it.
You ever look at your plate after you've eaten and you the remnants of the food sort of look like a face? It's kind of creepy when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, next chapter.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're walking across the street, you're like, what the fuck? Then we did Emerging, which was not a horror story in the traditional sense, in that there was no monster as much as there was a apocalypse using a realistic kind of doomsday scenario that people always worry about, a super virus that couldn't be cured. It was a solid story, but kind of unremarkable at times too. And I remember the lead in it being, despite being a doctor, he was kind of bad at his job.
Well, there's that one part that we harped on about where it was like the test came back negative for everything. That means it's not Ebola. Yes.
He's like, oh, phew. They're like, no, but you realize it's still something, right? We just don't know. He's like, oh, phew. It's not the one thing I was worried about. Then we did Devilman.
Devilman.
Which Nick made a theme song for, right there.
It's not. I didn't make that theme song. That's the theme song.
I deny that. I believe you made that theme song up right now.
Okay, so anytime that I just like recite the title of a series, it's Emerging.
Yeah, exactly. See, they could have used you, Nick, in helping to pump those series up. You could be their hype man. After Halloween month was done, we finished off our JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, or JoJo Bizarre Pokemon Adventure for the year, I should say, with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Stardust Crusaders.
Mm-hmm. I had a great time doing that one.
That was another really long but really fun episode, talking about all the craziness that is Dio and all the iconic parts of JoJo most people kind of at least know of from memes.
Yeah, the fact that stands came from it, of course.
Yep. Then we talked about butts a lot, because we talked about Kaijo.
Yeah.
Really all needs to be said. There was a lot of butts.
Butts.
Then we finished off the year with Skill of Lore, which we talked about just a week ago. Well, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, because we took a break.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, that was the year of recommendations in review.
I'm quite happy with the assortment that we got, because, we had, reliable, good series with Pokemon and JoJo. But we got some surprises in there as well that were nice little pleasant. It's like Skill of Lore was a nice pleasant surprise. And then we got bad series too, which was something that I begged people to send us at the beginning of the year, and we definitely got them.
Yeah.
Not like we were, covered in them, but definitely, had 3 or 4 that we could point to and be like, yeah, that was bad.
It was not enjoyable.
So good stuff.
Yeah. Because of the fact that we did JoJo and Pokemon this year, I found it hard to because usually we pick out like 3 series we really liked and 3 we didn't like at all and kind of share them. I didn't feel comfortable saying like, well, JoJo's Part 2 would definitely be on my list because, I've already talked about that before. So I basically have one recommendation out of that I really liked and then one of that I really hated. And
I think that you should go first because I do have 3 of each. And you can only step on 1/3 of my picks, whereas I could potentially
just
step
wipe
on
out mine.
Yeah, you just like make yours completely unnecessary.
So my favorite series, it's not like the JoJo or anything like that we recapped this year, was Shinsuke no Iron Maiden. It's a series that really surprised me with how enjoyable it was, despite what its premise made it seem. It really came across like it would be a very fan service, goofy, just ridiculous story, but it had a very earnest kind of romance underneath it that I really appreciated. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it was one of those nice surprises to get where you're like, I thought I was going to hate this, and I ended up kind of liking it a lot. So I enjoyed that one quite a lot.
I'm actually a little bit surprised by that. I don't know. I think that I kind of remember I think maybe because I remember more of what I had to say during that discussion, and I remember having a lot of negative to say about it, but I do remember that we both kind of came away from it, despite all of that, having a higher opinion than what we expected from the premise and from the first chapter alone.
Mm-hmm. My least favorite this year was Air Gear. I don't really need to explain.
I mean, that's not surprising in the slightest.
It's weird because I laugh when I think about Air Gear and I'm like, man, what a silly, goofy series it is. Ha ha ha, it's so dumb. And it's almost like a joke in my mind. And I start thinking about it more and more and I just start getting like irrationally angry. And I'm like, I need to stop thinking about this fucking series. It pisses me off too much.
So I'll go through now. Number 3 on my best, I put Ajin. It was something that I think that I need to get back to reading because I haven't read it since we did the cover of it. But it was just an interesting story with an interesting idea that played with the powers that it introduced really well. And on top of that, a lot of the characterization in it is actually really good. I remember really liking the stuff that was done with the protagonist in terms of how he was very different for a hero of that type of series. Much less, had very little empathy for the type of character that he was. Then number 2, I have Skill of Lure. Really liked that series. We talked about it just a couple of weeks ago, like you said. And really grew to like the main characters in the relationship that they ended up having together. Also, really, really, really nice to look at art. Mm-hmm. Number 1, I have A Silent Voice.
Yes.
Because it made me fucking feel things.
Like it broke this cold, bitter heart of mine.
I do have a cold and bitter heart. The stuff that happens like that. The sequence of chapters where you see inside of each character's head and find out what each of them are thinking in sequence after you've seen everything just from one character's perspective the whole time. And, that imagined world where she can hear, but she doesn't know what sounds, are. So even in her imagination, it's all distorted. She doesn't quite understand how it all sounds. She just imagines how happy she would be if she could hear music. That's really, really got to me. So, yeah.
My real favorite of the year was Keiju, because I love butts. That was a weird face to make with accompanying that statement.
I was trying to make it weird, at least. My worst list. Okay, so... Number 3, I have Akisora.
Okay.
Not the fact that that's number 3.
I know. That's that. I'm like trying to scan. I can figure 1 at least. I'm definitely trying to wonder. I was like, ooh, what else fits in there?
Akisora is probably objectively actually the worst series we looked at in terms of quality, but when you consider the fact that it is just pure smut that made the mistake of trying to be more than smut, and also when you consider the tremendous amount of joy that we were experiencing while talking about how terrible it was, I can't hate it I can't hate it more than that. I can't put it at the top of the list. It's not a series that made me angry in the slightest. So I don't really have any negative feelings associated with it. It's just, it was so bad that you had to laugh at it. Series I did have negative feelings towards was number 2, Air Gear.
You didn't love it?
There you go. It was really bad. There were things. I'm not sure if it was worse or just on par with what you had told me about it. Because honestly, like, I think that if I had just experienced it on its own without the context of this is, like one of the worst series that you'd ever read, and, spending years being built up to it, I feel that I would have hated it more just because of the shock of how stupid so much of it is. That said, it is still really bad. Ikki is a goddamn terrible hero. There is really weird fan service. Almost every female character is like transparently a sex object. Fight scenes tend to make no sense. Lots of characters are flat out wasted. And just a lot of them are generally unlikable, and a lot of the way the series works is stupid. There you go.
No, Nick,
but
let's spend another hour and a half talking about Air Gear again.
Another special episode we can do. Guys, I know that you were thinking that we would just, look back on the entire past year, but no, look. There were almost 400 chapters of Air Gear. You don't understand.
You don't understand.
There's so much to talk about.
One episode in a bonus podcast isn't enough.
It's nothing. This is now Air Gear Manga Recap.
My life spiraled into that kind of depression.
My number one least favorite this year was Today Love Starts. Because it was one of those things that got to me on a level where, like, it presents the world in a way that angers me in terms of how its characters feel emotion. I mean, it is probably the closest thing that we're ever going to get to, like, 50 Shades of Grey levels of romanticized abuse in a manga. It's so bad, and it made me so angry. Like, that has to be like a recurring thing for me. Like with my least favorite stuff that we've done for Weekly Manga Recap is not in terms of how illogical a story is, although it is illogical, or what the quality of the art or the writing is. It's just, it comes up with an idea that just offends me on a deep and personal level. Usagi Drop did the same thing, where it just angered me so much that I could not look at the good qualities of it. It made me so angry. Like Spider-Man, where it ruined one of my superheroes, and I was like, fuck all of this. So that's my choice.
Makes sense. I could dig it. Well, there we go. We had an interesting year, I think, more or less. As you said, we had a nice kind of diversity to it. I'm looking forward to what we do in 2017, though. I'm kind of interested to see if we'll hit upon something new we haven't touched on, or if maybe we hit upon any big series we haven't covered, or things like that. We often get people asking if we're ever going to do something like, a Full Metal Alchemist or Dragon Ball, and it's like, yeah, they're all options. So who knows? Let's see what the year brings. Although we still also, as we mentioned, have plenty of JoJo and Pokemon to get through too. So yeah. A lot of stuff to look forward to. With that, let's turn to our series that we generally recap in 2016.
So this is the part of the show where Nick has his knowledge of the past tested. So it seems it's been a growing tradition over the last couple of years.
So we'll start off. We'll go right down in the alphabetical order we usually do everything in. So where do you think Black Clover was at the start of the year?
I think that I don't believe that they had introduced Leash yet. but it was like right before that when they were fighting with the scientist girl and her mud minion guy.
Yeah, you're basically spot on. It was the fight against Sally, and Gauch has the change of heart and comes back to help Asta. So
And I will, just full disclosure on this, I might be a little bit more accurate this year because I compiled the results of the favorite series and MVP list. And so just by having to look at, okay, well, Leashed was like, an MVP, then that kind of triggers a memory. It was like, okay, that was what was happening. But if there wasn't an MVP for a series at that point, then I'm a little bit in the dark.
So from that time with Black Clover, we had the entire fight of Leashed all through 2016. The 6 different people that show up to beat the shit out of him. There's the entire Water Temple arc that takes place in there, and then everything that we've had thus far with the Witch Forest arc. I don't know what we'd call this one, but the light novel arc, I guess you'd call it.
Right.
So it's weird. I feel like a lot happened in Black Clover, but at the same time, I feel like not a lot happened in Black Clover since the past 2 arcs have kind of felt very similar in that way.
Yes.
And the Leashed part kind of dragged on for so long, even though I recognize, hey, essentially 3 arcs took place in the span of a year. I'm also looking at it kind of only feels like maybe 1.5 kind of took place. Where do you think Bleach was at the start of this year, Nick? Because Bleach ended this year.
Yes.
But
they were in the midst of the fights with the 4 elite general guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly where it was. I think that they were past Pernita. I'm not sure how far beyond that. I think that they were in the middle of Shinsui and Nanao versus Lulibaro.
It was in the middle of the fight with Askenak Lavar. It was right after.
Okay.
It was right after Yororichi's brother showed up and looked like he beat him, and everyone was like, "This ain't gonna happen."
What the fuck?
I'm not buying this for a hot second. So yeah, the whole Asken.
So Yororichi's lightning cat fetish thing happened right at the start of the year. What a way to kick things off.
Oh, and don't forget Urahara jamming her in the butt with a syringe that she didn't know about that basically turned her into a docile concubine.
Putting something in her ass that she didn't want to that turned into... God.
It was a really fucked up moment. So there was the whole fight with Askenak Lavar. There was the stuff with Gerard and his continuous comebacks. There was the Hoshwald stuff, and then there was
the most anticlimactic conclusion.
Yeah, and then there was essentially just the ending of all of it.
Guys, stop fighting! It's time for the final battle.
In true to Bleach form, the series, that's where it was the start of 2017. It lasted until August. It still feels like nothing happened in that time frame. Because you look at it, there was no resolution to the fight with Gerard. He just got soul power.
8 months for 4 battles basically, because there would have been the Askenak Lavar fight, the Gerard fight, the Hoshwald fight, and the Yuhabak fight. So 2 of those didn't have any resolution really because Yuhabak just sapped their powers away, and then that final fight with Yuhabak was pretty anticlimactic because it was like, oh no, the silver arrowhead has struck me. I lost my power, but I broke your Bankai. Yeah, but I'm not going to use that Bankai, which has been built up for the past several years because I had to do special Bankai training to get it reforged. But here's the old sword that doesn't Bankai.
Oh no.
I have been defeated by lazy writing.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that a lot more with the bonus pod that's going to be coming out hopefully sometime this next month. But there's a lot of strong feelings towards that ending.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, not a great year for Bleach.
Mostly just kind of general disappointment.
We had Tekking on during those episodes too. We had him on to talk about the end of Bleach.
Talk about the end of the show, yeah. And he wasn't especially happy either.
I really have not seen many people who were. So
I don't know if there is a single person who was 100% satisfied with that ending. Because how could you be, honestly?
Yeah. Fairy Tail, Nick. Where was Fairy Tail at the start of this year?
This is where it gets hard. I
would say this is impossible because you had to consider the breakneck pace that Fairy Tail moves at.
Exactly. So much has happened in Fairy Tail. Because I think half the Spriggan 12 was defeated before being brought back. I think that half of them that got defeated happened just this year, which when you consider how long it got, I know that sometime at some point early on, Wall and Laxus fought. I don't think that's exactly where they started the year, but unfortunately, I don't remember the order of things that happened in Fairy Tail because it's just been a long string of fights with the Spriggan 12 this year. And I don't remember the order that they happened in. So I'm going to say it was when Wall beat up Laxus's friends to piss him off.
Unfortunately, Nick, the chapter in which this year started with Fairy Tail was when we found out Natsu has super cancer.
Really?
Yeah, it was when Natsu like falls over and Nusi's like, "What's happened?"
It was that long ago? God.
So in the span of
It feels like that happened in July.
In the span of Fairy Tail, Natsu got magic cancer. The whole resolution of Brandish turning Quasi-Face.
Right.
There was Wendy and Cherie versus DeMaria.
God, yeah, that happened.
Urza versus Reinhardt, who revived all the memories. There was Gajeel versus Bradman and his supposed death.
I remember.
The return of the other girl from Fairy Tail Zero. There was Makarov's sacrifice. There was Gray
which has held up so far.
Yeah, good for you. There was Gray versus that one ice dude, whose name I've forgotten. There was Gray versus Natsu. And now the Stingless versus the Carde fight, which just wrapped up with...
Plus one of our what the fuck moments of the year, but we'll talk about that later because it's best remembered in that context.
So Fairy Tail easily has the most productive year of any series, but that's mostly just because Fairy Tail moves at that ridiculously high pace. I even forgot to mention it here, but there's also the Lucy versus Lassim fight, or Jacob fight. I forget which name he went by.
Oh my god, yeah, he was a thing.
There was another one in there to even consider. So, big year for Fairy Tail. Not particularly a great year for it, though, unfortunately.
I mean, has it had a particularly great year while we've been covering it?
No, not while we've been covering it, in my mind. But
Fairy Tail is Fairy Tail. That's all you need to know.
Food Wars. Nick, where do you think Food Wars was at the beginning of the year?
Oh, this is also a little bit difficult. I mean, because I could tell you probably like a sequence of events. I think... Okay, hang on.
That's right, Nick. If you don't get this right, I'm killing your cat.
Boop, 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 bong. Okay. I'm trying to remember based on, like, I'm kind of trying to remember with, like, a baseline of Weekly Manga Recap Lives that we did.
All right, there's not $1 million at the end of this question, Nick. Give me an answer.
Okay, I think that like the subgroup of the counts of Central was introduced. I'm going to say it was during Soma's battle with Azon.
It was actually right after that. It was the party. It was the party celebrating his defeat, his victory over Aizen, wherein Azami shows up at the end. So it was basically just a little bit afterwards. But after that, as you said, we had the start of the rebellion with the Polaris Storm and a couple other people. There was the introduction of Rentaro, the fight with him and Kurokiba. There was Alice declaring, "I'm angry what you did to my cousin." There was then the Soma versus Tsukasa match was in there, and then it was essentially the rest of the advancement exams, and then the Hayama match that just happened. Mm-hmm. Which was kind of weird to me. I feel like I thought more happened, and looking at it, I mean, there are kind of like 3 distinct little like sub-arcs within that, none of them particularly long, but I don't know why, I felt like I thought more happened in Food Wars this year than actually did. I don't know. Yeah,
I can definitely see that, and if there is truth to the idea of the advancement exam was fast-forwarded, you can kind of see why.
Yeah. But, so the year ended with the whole Azami stuff, or not Azami, Joichiro stuff, so that's where we're at now. But I thought, by and large, Fairy Tail, or Food Wars was a little bit mixed this year. I mean, there were some good points to it, and some definite points I think we were really excited for it. But the promise...
When you consider that last year, Food Wars was one of the best series of the year.
Yeah.
kind of fell back to earth a bit.
I think the promise of what this year or last year gave us, I'm still waiting for the return on. You know, I'm waiting for Alice to have that moment where she really takes it to Azami in an actual battle, not just tells him off. I'm waiting for that moment where the Council 10 really puts themselves against Soma and his group, and we see like intense battles that way. You know, we got a little bit of it with Hayama having that kind of payoff, but I think there's still a lot to do, and you know, we kind of lost a little bit of the mystique of Azami in that way.
Yes.
Moving on to My Hero Academia.
They were in the special camp training with the invasion.
Yes, the series began this year literally with the end of it being that the League of Villains showed up, the Vanguard unit showed up and were attacking. So there was actually a lot to My Hero this year.
Oh, yeah.
There was, because that was the start of the Vanguard group attacking. There were still all the fights that happened there within. You know, you had some of the smaller fights like Tetsu.
Well, yeah, there was the introduction of all the new villains in the Villain Alliance, especially
Toga,
especially the ones that didn't get captured right at the middle of it. Twice was in that group.
Yeah.
Their magician.
Dabi. So we got a lot there. Then there was the whole Bakugo getting kidnapped thing, which led into the fight between All Might and All for One, which was a huge turning point in the series. Then there was the training arc where Deku developed shoot style. Then there was the entire hero license exam. And then even after that, still within the same year, we got the Bakugo versus Deku fight that capped everything off and kind of put us into a new direction going forward between those two. So it was a pretty crazy year, actually. I think it ended a little bit, not weak, because I actually really loved the Deku and Bakugo stuff. The hero exam itself didn't quite hit what I hoped it would, mostly just because it kind of felt like some of the motivations that got placed to some of the new characters didn't really feel like it fit very well. And it also may have just been the lack of a presence of like the actual villains in the series, although we did find out one of them was masquerading within it. But I thought overall this was a really crazy strong year. You know, I didn't even with that. I did mention like some of the hilarious chapters, like when they go to everybody's rooms and that whole like sequence of chapters where they just like show off and it's like, oh my god, Tokoyami, you're such an edgelord loser.
That's one of my that's probably actually one of my favorite sets of chapters of the whole year. Was just, you know, there's all these characters that we really haven't gotten to know very well, and the way that they play off of each other, and you know how much you can learn about a character by just what they keep around their room.
Yeah.
And how Deku really is just a total nerd.
And I think this is the year also where we really got a strong push forward in the idea that it's not just Deku, Bakugo, and like Ida or Araka as the main characters. We really saw that it's the entirety of Class A, which is kind of like the major supporting cast here, because there were so many side characters who got their moments in the sun, even if they were small, limited ones. Almost everyone has gotten a part to be like part of one of the major groups that Deku's in, or have their own solo fight or moment to really show off everything that makes them who they are. And the promise of them only getting more of it is coming in the future, I feel. So I thought this was a really good year for My Hero Academia. A couple hiccups along the way, but definitely the most significant of any series this year in what it did.
Yeah.
Nisekoi, I don't know if you remember where it was at the start of this year.
I think that they were trying to rescue Marika from her marriage.
No, it was actually before that. It was a good deal before that. It was when Raku finally realized that Chichoge loves him. And essentially the rest of the year then going forward was kind of cleaning up the rest of the harem to settle their feelings with them before finally the conclusion. So a fine year for Nisekoi. You know, it kind of it went off on its own. Yeah, it went on. It, you know, in comparison, especially to Bleach, who had ended in the same week as a really good series that got to end on its own terms. So that was really nice. Between the
three series that finished, I would say it had the most satisfying conclusion.
Yes. One Piece. Where do you think One Piece was at the start of this year, Nick?
I know this almost exactly.
Okay.
They were on Zoa, and
wrong. We were still in Dressrosa. No, go ahead.
Fuck you. They it was basically right.
I feel like you're trying to
before-
attack me with your psychic powers.
It was right before.
Like you're
they got
trying to
the-
access Cerebro to destroy my mind.
That's not what Cerebro does.
It did next too with evil Xavier being controlled.
It's because they contaminated.
I know, but
Anyway.
still.
It was right before they got the explanation of the road poneglyphs.
Yeah, essentially it was, we were still within the flashback of what happened with Sanji's group on Zou and what led them to leaving. So it was basically the reveal that Big Mom's team had followed them from Dressrosa to Zoa. And then we followed with everything from there, which is kind of weird because I felt like more happened this year in One Piece than really did. I mean, as you said, we got the explanation about the red poneglyphs. We got the introduction of Cat Viper and Dogstorm and all the minks. We got the introduction of Jack, a glimpse at Vivi again, the promise of some big events going on in the past or in the future. And then the start of the Big Mom arc, which gave us Sanji's whole backstory, introduced us to the large group of Germa 66, gave us all these various characters within Mom's group, and then just recently ended with giving us the revelation that Pudding was evil all along as well.
It was me, Sanji!
But it is kind of weird because I feel like at the same time that there was all that not a lot actually happened in One Piece either. We did get some cool little bits to the world and the lore and things of that nature, but I certainly didn't feel like this was a jammed packed year. It was kind of a slower year.
It seemed like it was not a slow year. It was not unentertaining, but it was one of those things that really made you look forward to the future more than anything else.
Yeah, I think we're
we just had Dressrosa with Doflamingo being defeated, so it's understandable to build up the next bit.
That was an arc essentially like 3 years long too, so yeah, that was all that. But One Piece I thought was pretty good this year. It was definitely a really enjoyable one, but I think, as you said, it's kind of that slow build up into everything. Then this didn't start this year, but I'll just mention The Promised Neverland started this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still going on right now. It's going strong in Japan, so it seems like it's a series that's going to be running for quite some time. Really enjoyable series. We found out quite a lot thus far, but there's still a lot of the mystery to kind of find out. We're still not entirely sure everyone's stance. We don't really know how things are going to go from here. There's a lot of players at work and kind of exciting to guess and see what's going to happen each week. It's been easily one of the most pleasant surprises in manga this year for me. I like Promised Neverland kind of came out of nowhere and really just took off and hasn't really like slowed down or really had like a boring like drop off of build up. Almost every chapter kind of leaves you on a note of like, all right, now I have to think about this or something at least.
Mm-hmm.
Then Toriko, Nick. Where was Toriko at the start of this year? And you can't just say Acacia. That doesn't count.
Oh, God. Fuck.
I can almost guarantee you won't get it.
I'm not going to tap out on this one. I'm going to take a shot in the dark. Okay. I am going to say... No, that's not early enough. Shit. Wait. I think that he was fighting with minor characters. I can't...
It was before even that, Nick. This was the start of this year. Was after he had sent off all of his spawns, and those were all fighting the Eight Kings. So this is before anyone even was really fighting Acacia, because he had just sent out his spawns, and like it would be like one woke up and saw Nightmare, and Nightmare was like, "You shall not be on my land," and shoved it into the ground with a fucking like they all did their big things, and nothing really worked. But this was before anyone actually really fought against Acacia. There was still the entire fight with Jiro and Acacia to do, with Jiro's death. There was still everything to do with Midora and his thing with Froze, and then him eventually coming back. There was still the entire thing with Toriko and his demons, and that long, exaggerated fight, and then eventually the conclusion, which is weird because Toriko ended in November. So essentially a full year of Toriko ran, but it still doesn't feel like a lot happened in that. But to be fair, it was, as we've come to find out, the final fight of the series, which usually tends to be kind of like dragged out, like false finishes and a lot of kind of like slow build up to a payoff. So I guess it makes sense that Acacia was the majority of the year, but it doesn't feel like a whole lot happened in honest thinking.
Not really.
We still did get a great penultimate chapter, though. So, finally, Nick, where was World Trigger at the start of 2016? This one, of all the ones going back...
Wait, hang on, stop. Okay. I believe that they were going into a rank war, and then we cut away to whatever the fuck the secondary... neighbor kingdom was invaded.
Galapoa.
Yes.
You're very close. It's actually after that. This.
Oh, really?
Of all the series I looked at where it was at the start of the year, this is the one that shocked me the most because I thought a lot more happened in World Trigger this year, and I was very wrong. The first chapter was Galapoa is still invading, and Jin realizes that Yotaro is going after Hyusei. And you're like, holy crap, nothing happened. Like, the only things after that are the two rank war battles.
A lot of those first chapters we were very much like, well, nothing happened. So.
There was the whole fight with Gatlin, I think was his name, the guy with like the Dr. Octopus arms.
Yes.
And his son. That was like a really big fight and going on, so there was a lot of things there. There actually were not.
See, my prediction came true that you would be cut down.
A lot of people are saying there were a lot of more breaks with World Trigger. There actually weren't. 2016.
There was just the one long break.
Yeah, has actually been a lot of no breaks with World Trigger, which was a welcome change for 2015. But then it happened at the end where the hiatus has come about. So for the most part, though, World Trigger was really constant, and that's why I was a little bit surprised. But yeah, there was the fight with Katori Squad. It was kind of a little bit of like some stuff in between then, and then the fight with the Akoma Squad, Noji Squad, and that was it. I mean, we had a little bit of build up at the end, but two rank wars matches was essentially the grand majority of World Trigger's year.
The big thing that happened at the start of the year was Hughes deciding to join with Tamakoma 2, and when you consider the big break, I mean, like we were just getting to the point where they were going to have their first rank war together. Unfortunately, before Ashihara Sensei fell ill. But
I still don't think there's any word yet on when.
There's been no update as far as I know.
So I'm hoping Ashihara gets the best for 2017. I'm really hoping so.
Where was Hunter x Hunter at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, technically there was a fucking Hunter x Hunter fucking return in this year.
How long did that last? Like a chapter?
I think it lasted. Chapters? It lasted a little bit longer than that, but I believe it was about the span of about a month and a half. It was not all that long.
And then it just went away with like nothing accomplished.
Yeah, Again, I don't like to say I told you so or anything like that, but it was the exact reason I was like, look, when this comes back, I'm not adding it to the recap again because I firmly believe it's not going to stick, and that's what happened. So it's like, yeah, if it comes back again, guys, that same logic is coming in. I'm not going to start recapping it again because I don't imagine it'll be in the magazine very much longer again.
B. Patnod in the chat says they got on a boat, and it's like, oh yeah, I remember you going over that.
So that's where all of our manga were. In 2016, of course, we had our Jumpstart series that began and ended essentially either just in the U.S. Jump or the entirety. We had Amalgam of Distortion. We had...
Which is still going, along with Spring Weapon and Ole Galasso and the one that... and Demon's Plan. All four of those are still going. But presumably some of them are going to end soon.
I should note, technically Boruto isn't a Jumpstart, but I believe Boruto has run its entire...
It does run in Weekly Shonen Jump.
Yeah, I think most of it ran in this year. I think it may have started at the end of last year, but for the grand majority of Boruto's run...
No, it started this year.
Did it? Okay. Well, it's bi-monthly, isn't it?
It's a monthly series.
Oh, it's a monthly. Okay, yeah, so yeah, we did get all of it then. Yeah, okay, because it was 8 chapters. So all of Boruto's ran thus far this year. Demon's Plan, as you said, Kimetsu no Yaiba, which I think is still running in Japan.
That's still going pretty strong.
Yeah, so that was one that didn't really seem to hold much over here, but is doing well in Japan. Love Rush, which
I liked it, but didn't do so well.
Surprisingly, a lot of people really like Love Rush. We've had a lot of people lament that we didn't like commentate on it more. That I even had people angry I couldn't add it to the poll. And I'm like, look, guys, I only have 10 options for manga to pick this year, all right? But a lot of people really, really liked Love Rush. Ole Galasso, as you said. Red Sprite, which we read and we really enjoyed. We're hoping for more from that. Ruby manga started this year, as everyone greatly beloves. Spring Weapon #1, and of course, who could forget Takuan and Batsuo's Daily Demon Diary.
Now I have to see your underwear. There must be balance.
It was a legitimately funny moment, but still pretty weird. So that was all the 2016.
Like she was 5.
That was our 2016 manga, Nick. I guess we'll save that for the end. After the Superlative Awards, we'll give out our best manga 2016.
Yes, let's do our extra stuff. Let's have our 3-hour-long award ceremony.
We're going to start
people off stage because everyone thanks the Academy and their parents and all that shit.
We're going to start off. We won't start off with the biggest categories. We'll try to save those to you, just like the real Academy Awards that make you wait until best director.
Hold on to the end in order to find out if Leonardo DiCaprio won.
So let's start off.
That's going to be the next thing that supposedly haunts him in his deepest, darkest nightmares is the fact that he hasn't won a weekly manga recap supplementary award.
He's like, soon. I was part of that one joke in Food Wars about that bear. Revenant 2.
Jokes of the year, honestly.
I fucking love that.
Oh no, I spilled hot sauce on myself.
This water balloon full of barbecue sauce got all over me. Better rub it in.
How am I gonna fight this bear? No, I'll kick it in the nuts.
Just wandered into the woods with the baseball bat and killed this bear.
So is there some guy who's taking vengeance on him? No, it's just one man's very, very poorly thought out.
It's a very bad
determination to stick with it.
Oh man, that is a good one. All right. Let's start with the best new character. Best new manga character, I should say, of 2016. And a lot of these suggestions were brought upon by you guys who sent us in your recommendations, your nominees. So, of the 4 best new characters of 2016, Nick, there's Cat Viper from One Piece, Gang Orca from My Hero Academia, Ikuma from World Trigger, or Ray from The Promised Neverland.
I mean, honestly, it really depends on the route you want to go with this. You could just go with the option of who brought us the most joy.
That's where I think you'd want to go, right?
I mean, yeah, but you could also go in the because, like,
I mean, Ray's easily the most significant of that group because he's the only character.
Most significant, and he's been the most interesting. But God, Ikuma's so funny.
And I love
so consistently
Cat
funny
Viper.
and badass too. I feel like we wouldn't be being true to ourselves if we didn't pick Ikuma, honestly.
He was a welcome breath of fresh air. Not that World Trigger needed him, but a character who was that blankly kind of simple-minded in the face of everything else.
I can't kill her. She's a cute girl.
You do it.
You're handsome. You can get away with it.
But how straight-faced he was about everything. All right.
So yeah, I think we have to go with him.
Much the same way, Nick. What was the best new design of 2016? Now, this can either be
There's a running theme on this one, I feel like.
There is. Now, it can either be a character who gets a new redesign or a character who just showed up for the first time and has a very interesting design. So our nominees are Hitsugaya, who showed up with his new coat at the start of Bleach this year. Didn't do anything, but he had a new coat. It was pretty snazzy. Leashed. A lot of people we were impressed with Leash's new design. Hayama with his villainous new
his
attire.
badass winter furry coat.
Yeah. Acacia after eating Neo, and he stopped looking so stupid with the big dumb nose.
It was in between when he started looking stupid again when he grew mouths everywhere.
And Yaoroshi with the Gale Force costume.
Yorashi.
Whatever, Nick. His Gale Force costume. I feel like I added Gang Orca on there, but I must have forgotten. Although I guess no, it was he did come in this year. Last minute edition, Nick. Gang Orca from My Hero Academia as well.
I mean, I don't really think that you can honestly go wrong in this list, except with Hitsugaya.
You mean the one that I added, I think, 2 weeks into the year? That just never got removed?
Pretty much, yes. I had that same coat when he was a zombie anyway.
Yeah, but he showed up and it looked cooler this time. That's why I made the list.
I think that if you look at it in terms of everything, because, I mean, yeah, Leash looked cool, and yes, Hayama and Yorashi did get a nice, neat little outfit, but I think it has to come down to either Acacia or Gang Orca. Acacia was the most different, and had, I think, the most improved design because of how god-awful Neo on its own looked. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go with just best design for a brand new character, you got to go with Gang Orca, although that's kind of cheating because he did exist in the previous series, but...
Yeah, I suppose there's a little bit of a cheat there, but I almost feel like giving it to Gang Orca solely because it's a design that you don't see in anything else. Like, Acacia becoming kind of like a Dragon Ball Z-like villain is something, like, it's a design you kind of expect before, but I don't think anything is going to make a Gang Orca-like character where he has a tie that's a tongue.
The tie is my tongue, yeah.
Yeah, and like the giant orca face and everything like that, so I'll defer to you. But
I think the Gang Orca is a fine pick.
All right, Gang Orca, best new design in 2016. This one's tough because I feel like you almost need to see them to rate.
You really do. I have looked at these previously, at least, though.
So this is the nominees for the best 2-page spread of 2016, and the nominees are Tokoyami Unleashed from My Hero Academia Chapter 78, which is where his shadow had essentially gone, like, hulked out and was raging in this giant 2-page spread. It was screaming while kind of hovering off of himself. There was Chitoge's Tears of Love from Nisekoi Chapter 227, I think, which was basically like the end of the series, where her and Raku kind of get together and have their sweet little moment. It was a little bit before that, I believe, because Nisekoi ended in August, if I recall correctly. But it was right around that time there was this big 2-page spread of her off in like a field, and it's very, very beautiful, I suppose. Asta,
I suppose.
I suppose. I don't remember it off the top of my head, so I'm deferring to you a little bit on these. Asta defeats Veto from Black Clover Chapter 71. This is the big 2-page spread where he goes up and beats the shit out of him, and it's a crazy spread to look at because it's very chaotic. It's almost hard to read, and I mean that in the best kind of sense because it's a lot of emotion going into that panel, and a lot of kind of epic swelling to it based on how kind of chaotic all of the lettering and all the line art and even the way the panels kind of fit together. So that one's very impressive. And then finally, United States of Smash from My Hero Academia Chapter 94, where All Might delivers his final attack on One for All.
I really don't like the Veto page, honestly.
Aww.
I do not enjoy it. I think that it is crowded, and there are too many effects, and it is difficult to tell what the hell is going on. So that's me.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah. I think that it's got to be United States of Smash, but I will say that I think that the other two are very good. I like seeing the shadow surrounding Tokoyami, and honestly, like, I remember the first time reading that chapter of Nisekoi, just how perfect that one image of Chitoge turning around was to cap up their conversation.
I want to go through and look at these one more time. So I'm gonna pull these up real quick. Once again, this is Nisekoi Chapter 227, which came out in the July 25th issue of Shonen Jump. And is right towards the end of the magazine. So I want to look at these kind of side by side, because I do remember this Nisekoi one being pretty damn impressive. Yeah, that is pretty amazing. And let me just really quickly see the Tokiyami one, because to be completely honest, even though I love and appreciate how cool the All Might moment is, United States of Smash doesn't do a whole lot for me, because you don't get a lot from that panel. It's kind of the aftermath where it really comes to effect.
I actually prefer the precursor immediately before it, where it's transitioning between him. It's basically when he starts rearing up until his fist first connects, and you see All For One's face distorting around his fist as he's getting punched.
Mm-hmm. It's a good one. Man, that's a tough one. Because the Tokoyami one, that's a damn impressive art right there. Like, managing to capture a shadow in that way, a living shadow with that much intensity.
Like, it looks like it's eating him.
It looks like he's eating him, and that's just got to be a tough style to, like, actually draw something like that. Like, you had to kind of admire the impressiveness of it. It's a toss-up for me. Both of those are really impressive images. Looking between them, I think there's a little bit more going on in the My Hero one. But as a pure 2-page spread, that's what the Nisekoi one is. So I think I might give it to Nisekoi.
I think I'm fine with any of those, honestly.
Executive decision, it's going to be Chitoge, and Nisekoi will take that for best 2-page spread. But
Nisekoi wins an award.
Yeah.
From Z Grade Podcaster.
Komi Sensei shows up and says, "Give me that latte." I'm like, no. I start beating him with a broom. No, get out of here.
Go do no hearts again.
I'm going to save those ones for closer to the end, and we'll go over to Best Power of 2016, Nick. What was the best power? Our nominees are Crackers Biscuit Fruit from One Piece. Although, really, Cookie Fruit, let's be honest. The Brits don't have that. Gang Orca and his Orca powers.
Being an orca.
From My Hero Academia.
If there's going to be one that has best description, it's that one. It's an orca, but on land.
The Ikuma Whirlwind from World Trigger.
Coma.
The Meatball Power from My Hero Academia. Although I guess we had seen it before, so I guess it's not fair to say best power, but Osamu's spider could also probably qualify on its own.
I'm going to go with Meatball, honestly. Gang Orca is a badass, yes. I really liked the fight between Luffy and Cracker, and Ikuma Whirlwind is cool. But in terms of like most shocking, you would have to go with teenagers being turned into small balls of hamburger meat that could still feel pain. So it was the most surprising and most memorable to me.
Yeah. I do have a soft spot for Akuma Whirlwind, especially in a series like World Trigger that doesn't have many techniques per se. But yeah, Meatball was such a crazy looking power, and it was pretty shocking once you saw it. So I'm feeling fair giving it to the Meatball power from My Hero Academia. Moving on then, we'll do our best speech, or we want to save best speech to actually open up those chapters and go over the speeches first. I don't know if you want to open them up on your end, and we'll do another one in the meantime.
I may not remember them. I'll open them up though.
All right, open up the best speeches, and in the meantime, we'll do the best fight of 2016. Nick, there were a lot of recommendations to this one. I had to cut several of them out just so we didn't have like 13 recommendations for this. But there's a lot of legitimacy, I think, in just about all of these.
Basically, we have a lot of fights to go over because we talk about a lot of shonen manga.
Which was weird, though, because, like, looking back, I was like, there weren't many good fights this year, but then I actually did, like, kind of go through them. I was like, oh, I guess there were a lot of, like, pretty significant fights this year. So we'll start off at the top of the list. I think this is the only place it comes in without an ironic sense to it. Fairy Tail, Laxus versus Wall, which I believe, I guess, took place within this year. And
I think that was probably the best fight in Fairy Tail this year.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that probably actually remotely approaches it is Bradman and Gajeel.
Yes. Guys, Luffy versus Sanji is not a fight. That didn't happen. Sanji just beat up Luffy.
Sanji just kind of beat him up.
It's not a fight.
Sanji versus the human statue Luffy.
Urahara versus Askin Naklavar in Bleach. This was actually a really enjoyable fight in terms of Bleach. It was one of the few times, especially in the final arc, that it felt like a villain's defeat didn't feel like it kind of came out of nowhere.
Although it did kind of come out of nowhere, honestly. He got
did.
backstabbed.
Almost literally came out of nowhere, since none of us had any idea where the fuck Grimjow was. But
out of nowhere.
In everywhere, it was one of the few fights that felt satisfying. Both guys kind of showed off cool powers. There's a lot of fun little bits to everything there, and it was really enjoyable. This is when people suggested then Luffy versus Cracker from One Piece. Kind of, it's tough to call it a fight in the same way as the other ones were, because we didn't really get much of this. It was sort of Luffy fighting.
Well, we caught snippets of it because we cut away from it a couple of times.
But it's essentially, I think, why people like it is kind of almost that it becomes a squash match at the end of it, where Luffy finally just gets the upper hand and just beats the shit out of Cracker and one hit KOs him. So I think a lot of people enjoyed it for that. And
it's a badass moment, and I like how, and it did a lot to establish how strong Big Mom's forces were, that one of the generals nearly defeated Luffy single-handedly.
Then there was this is probably the biggest one I think of the year, the most significant. All Might versus All for One from My Hero Academia.
It's kind of unfair to all the other fights.
It is. It's a little unfair.
But it's such an important moment, and has, as badass a moment as United States of Smash in it. But, even when you consider, it's honestly not the most action-packed out of them, but, the stuff that All for One does, combining all the different quirks together and almost doing it more to show off than to win. The back and forth that they have verbally, and the image of All Might protecting the flame of One for All while he's struggling to carry on the battle. It's really not fair, but it's the only right answer, I think.
There's still two other nominees though, and Annalise wants the category to be the best fights besides that. World
Honestly,
Trigger.
that might be appropriate, but
World Trigger had a really good fight. Tamakoma 2 versus Akoma Squad versus OG Squad. That's sort of the last rank war match we had of World Trigger.
It was a really good rank war.
It was really surprising how well executed, how kind of really well paced it was, how everyone kind of seemed to have their ups and downs and showed their strengths and had really just great individual moments across the board from characters.
I think it says something for World Trigger as a whole. That's one of my favorite moments in a battle was Chica doing a little hop.
Yeah.
Like that. Just that.
Just her playing mind games.
Mm-hmm.
Really good fight.
Mind games.
And one from Black Clover, which was Veto versus Asta, Vanessa, and Fenrir. Although I guess you could also say Asta, Vanessa, and Fenrir versus, I don't know, fucking whatever dude they're fighting in their current arc that they're doing to say Fauna. It's the same fight.
That might have stood a greater chance if they hadn't done the same thing again.
Yeah. But still, that fight in and of itself was a pretty enjoyable one. But yeah, I think as you said, All Might vs. All for One, I don't know if it's the best executed fight of all of them, but it's certainly the one that had the most emotional weight behind it. None of the other ones were as significant to their series.
Best fight of the year, Ikoma versus Gang Orca. I'm glad that we've gotten to the point where people just have like these favorites, like as kind of a community.
So yeah,
not Sanji versus Luffy.
Wasn't a fight. So yeah, we'll give that one to All Might versus All for One. Probably the only fair way of doing it. No, if I had to pick if I had to pick the runner-up to it, like if you ignored that fight, I would probably give it to Tamakoma 2, Akoma Squad, OG Squad. I think
absolutely,
that was a really excellent fight. So that is our best fight of the year. Let's do a best speech. Do you have those open?
Yes.
Okay.
We've got 2 from My Hero Academia and then 1 from Toriko.
Yes. So our first from My Hero came very early on in the year, and this is Deku from chapter 105.
That's not especially early. That was about midway through.
Yeah, I guess it feels earlier. I guess
It was during the provisional license exam that it happened.
Yeah, that is true. But
now that I've undercut you want to go over what?
Yeah, now that you just spashed.
Now that I've talked about how unreliable you are.
He talked about wanting to be there if he was only. Who cares?
Question your authority and your reliability.
It was this really cool speech where Deku made mention of the fact that he wanted his legs to be stronger, and so much of the reason why is because he talks about how 1 or 2 seconds could have changed so many things, and how if he had only been faster, he could have changed so many events, and how important that was to him as a hero. I don't know if you have the exact quote he has up there, but
what was it? There it is. I chose to fight. I busted up my arms. If they hadn't been broken, I might have been able to steal back Kachan. If I'd succeeded, then maybe All Might wouldn't have had to fight all for one. Back then, if only I'd carried Kota back to Aizawa-sensei. If only I'd run away faster than that villain could follow. I'm training now with a focus on my legs because I should have gotten there faster.
It's a really cool speech. It was a nice way of showing why Deku has changed his focus, why he's kind of moved his new style. And it was nice to kind of get this kind of very heroic speech from him, too, of talking about how he's like, oh, if only I could have been there faster. How much you can see how much of the responsibility of his dedication to being a hero weighs on him. So it's a really enjoyable one.
There's also that moment where he saves Toga, who was disguised as Uraraka, and he reveals afterwards that he knew that she wasn't Uraraka from the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's a cool moment where it's just like, oh well, he's a hero anyway. He did that big diving save despite the fact that she wasn't his friend.
This one's too long for us to read all the way through.
It is way too long.
This is a damn great speech. This is Midora reading off his full course menu from chapter 385 of Toriko, where he talks about how his full dish is all the memories he shared with his mother Froze, that his I think his drink is like the kisses she kissed upon his cheeks, or
the meat dish of my full course meal is a feeling that still lingers on my forehead even now. Her goodnight kiss. You and your Oedipus complex!
It's such a stupid concept, but it's so perfect with Toriko, because he's talking about how his entire full course menu, this thing that's built up with tangible items throughout the entire series, are all just the various different affectionate moments he got to share with his mother and his family. Mm-hmm. And it's so sappy, it's so schmaltzy, but it's so awesome at that same way because it can only exist within Toriko.
Froze's smiling face, that's my main dish.
Come on, man. That's amazing. If you deny that, then I don't know why you're reading manga.
Pretty much exactly that.
And our final nominee for the best speech, this one happened just the other day, basically.
Very recently, yes.
We already mentioned it at the time, but this is All Might explaining to Deku and Bakugo why they need to learn from one another, because it's not just about winning and it's not just about saving, that they can save, or they can win by saving and save by winning. He has his big speech to the two of them to kind of get them to settle their differences. Chapter 120.
I love to win just like you, Bakugo, and like Midoriya, I strive to save those in need. If either aspect was missing, I could never have stood for justice in the way I did. Midoriya looks up to your strength, Bakugo, and Midoriya, Bakugo fears your spirit. You've both just laid everything bare, so can't you see now? If you can learn to respect each other and lift each other higher, you can become the ultimate heroes, ones who save by winning and win by saving.
Yes. People are wondering why there weren't more. We didn't actually get a lot of nominees for this one.
Not a whole lot.
And a lot of the ones we got, though there were some very good ones, like I wanted to put in Alice's speech to Azami. There weren't, those were good moments, but they weren't speeches in quite the same way that I think we were kind of looking for. And I don't know why people keep saying Brook to Big Mom. You're technically spoiling things that haven't happened yet, because I don't think Brook's actually said anything to Big Mom yet.
Spoilers.
So there were some good ones, but this is why we kind of asked for nominations, because we go through the series every week and it's hard to remember all the times where they happen.
A lot of stuff kind of mushes together occasionally.
So that's why we rely on you guys. But I firmly believe all three of those speeches right there are really awesome moments. My personal favorite is Midori's full course menu. I mean,
absolutely.
It's so stupid, but so perfect in that way. It's quintessential manga where you're like, this is incredibly dorky, but God, I love this.
Mm-hmm.
So, where I think we're unanimous on that. We're giving it to Midori's full course menu. Now our big awards are left, so we'll move to some of the goofier ones. Who was the best WMR created character this year, Nick?
So our nominees for this are, we've got two from Food Wars to start things off. We've got the Polaris Dorm Bro Dudes.
Yes. Who are just like, man.
The two characters whose names we don't even remember, that because we had to do voices for them when they were going off to investigate with Hisako, we just kind of off the cuff turned them into total bros.
We're such assholes too.
Dude, you gotta wear your backwards visor, man.
Oh, bro, I'm so swole today. How could I forget?
Oh. Then we've also got the Totsuki Institute accountant, a more recent creation when talking about the winter advancement exams, the amount of money that must be thrown around in order to have these stupid high schoolers taken to place just to take a stupid advancement exam.
For all the money that school has to waste on pure spectacle, they're like, hey, it costs a lot of money to close the roof. Why don't we just keep it closed during the fall classic? They're like, no, keep it open. We want to make sure that the contest ends when the moon's directly overhead. He's like, why don't you just get a clock? That'd be a lot cheaper. They're like, no. Stop with your stupid opinions. Like,
I think that the thing that we noted on was that an extra bus had accompanied them to one destination. There was nobody riding the bus there. It was just there to take them back.
That's right. They all looked out the window to see, like, that's the bus that'll take you home if you lose. And, like, some dude had to be like, so we're renting a second bus. Like, they're not all going back home on the same bus. This is a bus that's separate from the bus that took them there. They could just as easily
take them back. It drove out with them just so that they could point to it and say, that's the one that will take you back.
You got so much money for this.
Honestly, I think that's one of those jokes that the more you focus on, the more ridiculous the series gets.
Then, of course, there was the Mark Wahlberg Baron Tamago character.
We're not gonna forget him, I don't think, anytime soon. And then one that's fallen a little bit by the wayside. But living on in the spirit of Unohana, who is dead and never coming back, who is officially dead and never coming back now. So I can't. Thank God I don't have to remember to continue that joke anymore. For Black Clover, we have Rebecca, who's never going to be an important character.
Never, Nick, never.
No.
She's probably not going to even show up again. Maybe in like one of those like at the end of Scrubs when he's walking down the hallway and he sees all these various characters from his past. Maybe there'll be a moment like that where Rebecca shows up at the end and everyone's like, who's that? Oh, it's that chick he had a crush on, that one. Whatever. She won't be an important character, Nick. She's never going to show up again. She's certainly not going to have to rescue her family at some point.
The unfortunate thing was that, we went through, the rescue, and then she still showed up like one more time while you were still doing that joke, just to drive it home. And then like she hasn't shown up since.
But they keep including her in like those fucking like harem pictures, so I feel like she's gonna show up again. Well, I should say she might, but personally, she's never gonna be an important character, so we're not gonna have to see. We're not gonna see.
Never gonna be drawing color again.
No, definitely not.
I mean, I like all of the characters that we have come up with.
Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
I think it's unfair for us to pick this one. Because it's almost like we're,
that's a good point. That's tooting our own horn. Yeah.
I don't think that's up for us to decide. So to the people who are listening, you tell us what you thought your favorite WMR creative characters.
Are we just going to see if we can keep track as the comments scroll by, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already seeing kind of a theme with people in the chat already talking about it, but we would do that, or maybe I'll put up a straw poll and
Oh, we might not need that.
There's a lot of people who are saying they love the Bear and Tobago Mark Wahlberg. So, I'll
We'll put up a straw poll just in case, though.
yeah. So we'll put.
And guys, keep in mind this is stuff we came up with like this year. So Unohana, no, that's a veteran. She's going in the Hall of Fame in terms of created characters.
She's our WWE Donald Trump in the celebrity ring. She's always there.
Oh no! Oh god. Okay. Yeah.
And now we have the biggest what the fuck moment of 2016. There probably should be more on here.
There probably should be.
And honestly, it's tough not putting like 6 different moments from Bleach this year in there.
Or from Air Gear.
Yeah, well, I tried not to go with recommendations so much. But these ones, all 3 of the ones that are on here are literal moments where I think we, at the time, were like, what the fuck? Like, even within the show itself. So, it starts, I'm actually going to start from the bottom and work my way up. So,
yes.
Chad becomes a boxer for the final chapter of Bleach. It's one of those moments that it's like, I can't, why?
Why only hit? Okay, is she becoming a doctor, but only Chad otherwise gets that career explanation?
A career that's so contrary to his character comes out of why? I have heard people say the orgasm magic one should be on there. Maybe it should be. It could be considered an unofficial 4th one in here, kind of like adding gang orca in the last moment. Guns in Space from Toriko. This is a moment. As many times as I see it, I still don't understand what it is.
Keep in mind, that's the last image that Toriko ended on.
Yeah, it's credits from there, and it's like, okay, I get it. Giant snake in space. Okay, sure. It's the world of Toriko. Oh, it's like a planet that has a donut for a ring. Why not? It's Toriko. Why are there guns in space? Just giant guns.
Well, I think my favorite moment of that was the fact that you hadn't seen it the first time you read through it. It was only when we were going through the chapter that you realized, wait a minute, there are guns.
It's like, why? Why are there guns in space? It's so, there's no context for it. It's not as though like anyone's gone to space in a Toriko flashback before and they've been like, oh, there's a revolver over there next to that planet. There's just giant guns out there.
And just someone like, hey, why have we never looked out and seen guns out there? Does looking at a telescope into space get us food somehow? No.
It is insane. But our other biggest what the fuck moment here, I think people may have forgotten this one, but at the moment I sure as fuck
I for me this has to do it, honestly, because okay, look. The other 2 are details. Mm-hmm. You know, there are bits where it's like, huh, that's kind of weird. You can obviously we had a big freak out. It was like, what the fuck is that? But okay, there were guns in space in Toriko. Didn't that lead to any bigger implications about the series? Chad becomes a boxer, but it's right at the end. This, it's what the fuck, not just because it comes out of nowhere, but because you have to say what the fuck to the character responsible as well.
And it accomplished nothing.
It accomplished negative.
You may have forgotten this, but there was a point when Brandish is reconciling with August, and she's basically convincing him not to fight the rest of the fairy tale members, and she's easing them up on their conquest. And then out of fucking nowhere, Mess shows up and betrays the shit out of him by stabbing him with the sword and acts like he just got one over on the guy. He's like, yeah, I got him. and everyone's like, why? What did you do this for? He was coming around.
And then August blew them up.
Yeah. And August got super pissed off. He's like, I stabbed this dude with a sword in, like, the side. He's dead now. He's never going to use magic. You're like, why did you do this, Mest? Is this the sole reason you came around was to just fucking
let's go over this in a little bit more detail, too. Because it's not just that Mest gets August stabbed by a sword. He causes Brandish to see August as her grandfather. And he's like, I've always seen you as my granddaddy. And then she goes, I always hated my grandfather.
Yeah, he basically mind controlled her to stab August.
Because he altered her memories double. And by the way, yeah, where the hell is Mest in all of this now? What happened to him?
Who cares? He is the most worthless member of Fairy Tail. He's this weird, like, evil character in Fairy Tail. Like, I know it's supposed to be like, oh no, he's just like the Batman of it. Like, he's the one willing to go just a couple steps further if need be. But he's not. He's just the evil douchebag of Fairy Tail. But
The face
like
that he pulled in that sequence was a look of triumphant evil.
He's like, got him. I think it's kind of unanimous on this one. It Mest super betraying August for no reason is the biggest.
I should bring up an honorable mention that we got, which was Tsukishima showing up to fix Tensa Zangetsu.
Again, there were so many Bleach ones that I was like, I don't even know where to start in that finale. Like, do you mention Aizen showing up and accomplishing next to nothing?
I think that at least warrants a mention because that is a pretty crazy moment.
Yeah.
And so we'll bring it up in the chat.
So now the biggest of the awards. We'll do best hero.
Best actor.
Yeah.
Best actor, basically.
Yeah. Best hero of 2016, Nick. Our nominees are All Might from My Hero Academia, Sanji from One Piece, Emma from The Promised Neverland, Asta from Black Clover, and Deku from My Hero Academia. I guess with honorable mention to Osamu from World Trigger, though this wasn't a year where he particularly was heroic so much as coming in.
Not him specifically, no. Yeah. I mean, if this had been the year where he left his, where he abandoned his Tryon body in order to save the day, then maybe. But some very different recommendations here. I mean, you've got the standard we've got our protagonists from 3 series on there, but Emma, of course, is a very different character, mostly just in terms of I think she definitely deserves to get nominated in terms of she is a very strongly good character in a series full of liars and assholes, and she really stands out.
A series with a lot of
strong morals.
Yeah, a morally gray series with one character who's no, against nothing else, everyone's coming out. I won't have it any other way.
And causing complications too because of that, which is nice to see. Asta started to come into his own this year. I'm not going to pick him. I'm not going to pick him, guys, because I hate him.
I do want to give a legitimate case though for Asta. I didn't just put him in to fill out the ranks, everything. This was, I think, a better year for Asta. I think this is where a lot of his antics at least made him more admirable. They're the moments at the end of the Water Temple arc where he kind of encourages the Kaido or Kaito, whatever his name is, and Kyoto and the other girl to kind of keep up with their dreams. He kind of motivates his peers. The joke's always that Asta always kind of was the inspiration for every character. But
I'm sorry, Greyfall in the chat. Why isn't Miss nominated? He stabbed August.
He apparently was the one thing.
He's the hero.
He's like, guys, I did it. As August is growing huge behind him. He's like, I stabbed him. He's dead, definitely. But no, I think Asta is worthy of the nomination. I wouldn't give him it, but he's definitely worthy of it. For me, I think it comes down between All Might and Emma. Sanji is very good as well, but I think his real chance to take it is probably coming next year when we're going to get to see him act. And Deku, again, very good.
Sanji, it's a little bit curious. I mean, he went through probably the most out of the characters on this, of everyone in One Piece. He went through the most, and is probably the most appropriate pick for that series. But at the same time, more than being the hero, he was basically the damsel this year.
Yeah. And this came after a while of being gone too.
Considering that this was really a growth year for Deku. He definitely did grow a lot, but it seems like his moment is still coming.
Which is actually kind of weird considering, because we put that big speech he had in there, which is a very big moment. But he also had that scene where he protected the kid from the muscle-based villain.
Goda.
And that was a really big heroic moment for him. He's had very big moments, but it's almost impossible to consider him considering what All Might did this year, because of what All Might did in sacrificing what's left of his powers, essentially to make sure that Deku could become that huge hero going forward. He protected that flame and gave it all to defeat All for One. And then at the end of the year came back in and kind of gave the real heroic message he needed to both Bakugo and Deku.
Yeah, I have to give it to All Might. I mean, it's again, it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah,
because he can only do that once.
I will say Emma is really strong on this. I think she's fantastic, but I think in terms of all around, yeah, what All Might did this year is pretty significant. Mm-hmm. So on to what may be my favorite award, the best villain of 2016. And this is a real cavalcade of villains here. We got Leashed from Black Clover, Askin Naklavar from Bleach, Neo/Acacia from Toriko, All for One from My Hero Academia, and Yuawak from Bleach.
Let's talk about the Bleach ones first of all.
Okay. I want to just note real quick, because I know people are already in the chat going to be saying this. Big Mom's not on here because she hasn't done a lot this year. She's around, but
she will have her chance to shine, I think.
I imagine next year is when she'll actually be there.
She really, other than like getting Sanji to marry, like, oh no, she's planning on killing those asshole Vinsmokes.
Yeah, Judge was maybe a more likely one. Maybe Judge could have been on here, but
was a dick. Yeah. Asuka Naklavar and Yuabak definitely brought a lot of entertainment to us. Asuka Naklavar more genuinely, because I mean, he was easily the best character in Bleach this year.
Oh yeah.
Very entertaining, very interesting character who brought some needed levity to the series. He was comedic, but he was also threatening. He had interesting powers. I really did dig him. Yuabak, a lot of it was mostly with us making fun of him, but he did definitely have his moments to shine. But I think that he was really hurt by just how lazily bullshit his power was at the end.
And how kind of his defeat had to come out of nowhere almost.
Mm-hmm. Was really hurt by the rushed ending. Leashed, I think, would be a primary contender for this award if the first 4 chapters of his appearance had maintained that momentum through the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. Instead, he got his ass kicked a whole lot and hasn't shown up really since then.
If he hadn't gotten his shit pushed in like 6 times in a row and then not shown up till the end, he'd probably definitely be the front runner, I think.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us down to Neo and All for One. All for One was intimidating, and I like the way that he was leaving things off to Shigaraki. But I think that Acacia was the villain this year because of how gleefully evil the dude was. The faces that he pulled while mocking Jiro and Midora. I mean, the thing that really got us back into Toriko this year was that fight he had with Jiro, where he just openly mocked the idea that he cared about his family. Then when he did the same thing to Midora, talking about how, oh yeah, well, Froze was an attractive woman. I liked getting to bang her, and she was good in the kitchen. Just such a douchebag.
He was a magnificent heel, like just so under everyone's skin, getting stronger and stronger. Like even a character who was built upon just a mountain of horseshit, like Midora. Like, who had, I can reverse what everyone does, and I have Meteor Spice and all these broken powers, and even still, Neo not only beat him, but is taunting him the whole time, talking about, like, and I never loved you, and I didn't love your mom, and she was just a piece of ass to me, and he was so evil, but he also in that same way had the speeches too. Like he has that whole long speech about the nature of the universe and hunger and how it's all
hunger
just primal,
is everything,
and that's all that matters.
Appetite is eternal. Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. It's Acacia to me. All for One's great, but All for One's like machinations are what are in work right now. He had a very impressive introduction. And then he got beat, and now he's kind of sitting in a prison cell watching his chess pieces go about the board. But
he's the kingpin sitting and staring at that wall.
Yeah. And he's just waiting for Daredevil to show up to talk to him, and he's just going to smash his face against the table and break his handcuffs.
I'm going to find the man who runs the prison, and I'm going to take that power from him. And then I will keep him company in his last days.
But yeah,
best episode of that season.
I'm gonna give it to Neo and Acacia. I think they just had a magnificent year. They dominated that year too with Toriko. He was basically the entire year. But even though he became a good guy in the end, that was a character who got more intimidating and more interesting as time went on, and really did kind of feel like a satisfactory final villain in the world of Toriko. Mm-hmm. So that is our Superlative Awards, our first time Superlative Awards.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys have any recommendations for new categories you want us to add next year, let us know, and we can add those on there. But there's still one more award left out to give.
Yeah, we've got our overall favorites, and I think that we individually tallied for this. I think that you said that you did it too.
I didn't tally those.
Okay.
I just have these ones up here, and then I put up a vote for our listeners to put their recommendations in.
Okay. Well, over the course of the year, actually, we did it a little bit at the end of last year, too. We've been naming our weekly favorites, as well as an MVP character. I have not tracked each individual character that we chose, because, that would kind of be... There were definitely a few where it was like, oh, yeah, the protagonist got picked a couple of times. I think that, for example, Soma got picked a couple of times. All Might got picked a couple of times. I think Acacia got picked a couple of times. In general, it was one character, one time in the whole year, though. But I did compile, how many times did a character from a series get picked.
Okay.
And so I have all the stats here.
Okay, I'm really interested in this.
So let's start with the audience. Most times that the audience picked their favorite was One Piece. There were 2 ties over the course of the year, and so One Piece was picked 20.5 times. My Hero Academia was the runner-up with 13.5, followed by World Trigger, then The Promised Neverland, then Black Clover and Food Wars, and then Toriko.
Wow, Black Clover had more picks than Food Wars.
Well, Black Clover was picked once.
Okay, so they were all kind of tied.
Food Wars was also picked once.
Gotcha.
Toriko was tied once. Then for the favorites overall, the MVPs, My Hero Academia got the most from me and tied for the most for you, alongside World Trigger. And my second was One Piece.
Oh, World Trigger. Okay, that makes sense.
In terms of weekly favorites for series overall, My Hero Academia was number 1 for both of us. Your number 2 was World Trigger. My number 2 was One Piece.
There you go.
Going down the line, let's see. For you, it was My Hero Academia, World Trigger, tied between Black Clover and One Piece. Food Wars, tied between Toriko and Promised Neverland. And then 3-way tie between Nisekoi, Bleach, and Amalgam of Distortion. 0 for Fairy Tail.
I was going to say, I didn't hear Fairy Tail on this list.
For me, it was My Hero Academia, One Piece, then World Trigger, then Food Wars, tie between Promised Neverland and Nisekoi, tie between Toriko and Black Clover, tie between Amalgam of Distortion and Fairy Tail, and then 0 for Bleach. Fairy Tail got 0 MVP picks and 0 favorites from you, and 0 MVP, and Bleach got 0 MVP picks and 0 favorites from me. Not too surprising.
Yeah, sort of making sense with the way things were aligning.
And it was once and once for the other one. So yeah, overall, it seems as though My Hero Academia was the favorite, with One Piece a very close second, I would say.
Although, that's kind of basing it off that year.
Just in terms of, yes, chapter to chapter counts.
Because I've been really debating on what I think the best series overall in 2016 was.
And keep in mind, of course, that doesn't take into account the fact that a lot of series were not present every single week. Of course, we had 3 series end. We had Promised Neverland only begin a couple of months ago. We had Jumpstarts showed up occasionally as our favorites. And of course, World Trigger unfortunately went on hiatus. So it was cut short as well.
Yeah. I think I've settled on what I'm picking though for my favorite manga of 2016. This one took a while to decide upon. Actually, let's see what the audience picked for the poll that was put up this week.
They picked My Hero Academia.
Yes, they did. Actually, by quite a big margin too. One Piece behind that, and then The Promised Neverland with World Trigger just a bit behind that. I think there were a lot of really good series this week or this year. My Hero Academia was fantastic. Promised Neverland was strong. World Trigger, despite not having a whole lot to do, got a lot of like. If you're a World Trigger fan, I think you got a lot out of it this year. Food Wars, even though I don't think it was his best year, still really good. And One Piece was fantastic. The same, and Toriko had some strong moments in there too. I never even moments where we really like Black Clover. But overall, I think the series I came away at the end of the year enjoying the most, or at least I feel the most excited from having read, is The Promised Neverland. Really, for a series that kind of came out of nowhere from an mangaka I did not know, a team, I guess, rather, with a premise that initially didn't have anything that really hooked me, has just become a series that almost like clockwork every week has me really excited for another chapter. You know, I'm constantly guessing at that series. You know, it already kind of twisted me on my toes by being like, Ray's the traitor, and being like, no, I just started liking him. But it's really such a fantastic series. Every week's kind of like a joy to read. It's a surprise. It hasn't like sunk down at all in any way. You know, it hasn't been running that long, but usually it takes series time to build up, whereas with this series, it's kind of been great all the way through. So I give it to The Promised Neverland this year.
I totally understand that. I looked at it in terms of the whole year. So unfortunately, Promised Neverland was at a disadvantage. I think that if it had been running for the entire year and it had maintained the quality that it has been in its first few months, then it would probably be my pick too.
Yeah. But
in terms of looking at the whole year, what I've gotten out of it the whole year, I have to go with My Hero Academia. A lot has happened in it. We had the big moments where there was the passing of the 2 torches between heroes and villain students. There was closure that finally happened. Well, not closure, but a huge development finally happened in the relationship between Bakugo and Deku to cap off the year. There were occasional slow spots, especially in terms of the
Hero
second
exam.
half of the hero exam. But overall, in terms of the stuff that got out of it, the side characters that got expounded upon, the stuff with Kaminari and Shoji, and the stuff that happened during the rescue with Bakugo, where Kirishima and Yaoyorozu got involved, Ida stepping into more of a role as leader, even the stuff that happened during the move into the dorms, where they had more character building with the students that hadn't really gotten to know so far. So much happened this year that I really, really liked, and I have to go with it.
No, absolutely. It was a fantastic year, I think, for My Hero, definitely.
My Hero wins the audience poll for the second year in a row. So
it's really taken off. I think not enough can be said that just Jump in particular has been really fantastic this year. There's really no series I like dread reviewing, especially now that Bleach has kind of ended and Toriko kind of picked itself back up and is out of the magazine as well. Of the series we were like, I'm not a crazy big fan of Black Clover, but there's still usually a chapter every so often I enjoy. The only series I like am never crazy about reading is Fairy Tail, and that's for its own reasons. But I think Jump in particular, like what we get with the English Jump, has just been almost all really great series. I know not everybody agrees with that, but for my money, it's all been fantastic. And I really want to give like a special thanks to the English Jump team because they've been killing it this year. You know, we've been getting like great translations, great quality work. I know how crazy it must be when those weeks come in where it's like fucking 3 jump starts and 2 monthly. God damn it! Why did we do this? But beyond even that, there's all the stuff that happens that they released that we don't even talk about. All like the free stuff that comes out onto the site. Asta in Space, I think Dragon Ball Super, Eldalive, I think just recently started back up on there as well. And one of our Patreon goals that maybe we'll hit this upcoming year has us adding more series to the recap, so maybe some of those will get on there. But regardless of whether we ever do or don't talk about them, like I want to just mention how much work has to go into, you know, getting all those series, translating them, and being so consistent with everything. So it's been a great year, I think, for manga, and digital manga is continuing to grow. I hope my only hope for 2017 is we might see it expand to more countries, because I know we have a lot of listeners from places like Germany and some of those Eastern European countries that really don't have a chance to read it in English, and I'm hoping that maybe we'll see it expand to those places.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the year will bring us. There's a lot of stuff that happened at the end of the last year in terms of the series that we covered that I really look forward to seeing what the next chapter holds. Yeah. Hopefully we're going to have lots of fun moments this year as well. We are already in the midst of working on our next recommendation, which we should, I think, have ready to go next week. Ballroom Yokoso. Yeah.
Yep. All right. I'm looking forward to 2017, Nick. I think 2016, in many ways, was a rough year, both in and outside the podcast. Just in terms of like health related things that kept cropping up or delays and things that pop up. But I'm excited for what's going to happen in 2017. I know it's something that we maybe say a lot and maybe it doesn't have the same impact, but I legitimately mean this when I say we have very big plans for 2017. I think that
we're both working through things that we're starting to get out the other end on now, and it's going to let us enjoy the fun times more, basically.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. I think 2017 is going to be a very big year, not just for, you know, manga in general, but I think for this podcast specifically, I'm really excited for a lot of things we're going to have coming out, and the potential for this podcast to continue growing. So thank you all for listening. You know, thank you all for coming in and listening in on us through 2016, and for sticking around into 2017. I'm always very grateful that people have enjoyed this podcast as much as they do. And whenever you guys send emails in saying to that effect about how much you enjoy listening or how much the show helps you or even just gives you a laugh, even if I can't say it out there, know that I do read it, and it does. It is very appreciated, and I'm very grateful.
It means a lot to us that it means a lot to you. So that is going to do it for us. Yeah. 2016 is in the bag. Join us for the rest of 2017 as we talk on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes we need to have a little bit of a delay in order to get things straightened out, especially if we have streaming difficulties or stuff like that. But you can check us out on hitbox.tv/RoloT and twitch.tv/RoloT. And stay subscribed to our Twitter accounts for updates. You can follow at WMR Podcast and the hosts at RoloT and at Wide World of Time. Also, check out our past episodes to see if you haven't been listening to every single recommendation that we've done and something at the start of the episode where we were talking about weird series appealed to you. You can check that stuff out on our Podbean, weeklymangarecap.podbean.com, our YouTube, youtube.com/weeklymangarecap, and also you can subscribe to us on iTunes. And make sure to leave a comment or rating on there so that you can help us beat the woodworking podcasts.
Guys, New Year's resolution popping in here. A New Year's resolution I have absolutely no control over. But guys, 2017 Weekly Manga Recap becomes a top 50 iTunes hobby podcast. That's not high aspirations, guys.
That's not especially high.
I'm not hoping for the world here. I'm not like we defeat all of the NPR podcasts. But I'm saying top 50, all right? That of the massive library of hobby podcasts on iTunes, we could, at least for a second in time, be considered one of the 50 best. That's my aspirations. You guys need to make it happen.
Oh God! You can send us feedback as well as ask us questions to answer on one of our Q&A episodes, and suggest future manga for us to read by sending all that stuff to weeklymanga.recap@yahoo.com. We've got a whole year ahead of us, which means a whole year of recommendations to get through. So if there's an idea for a manga that you think that we might have a good discussion about, now is the time to send that in.
Absolutely.
Special thanks go out to, of course, our Patreon supporters, because your support allows us to create all sorts of bonus content for you guys to enjoy.
A special thank you to Matt Wilson and Brandon Brown, who are our newest patrons. Thank you very much, guys. Rufist. Your help and support is greatly appreciated.
And special thanks to the guys who help us create the podcast and help spruce it up into the current form that you see with your eyes now, sightly, with light reflecting off the screen, the visuals, sense, the infamous planet. And and of course, Steve Mann, our title card artist. You can check out Steve Mann's various title cards that he has made over the course of helping us out with the podcast on his Patreon, patreon.com/Steve Mann, where they are free to view. And hey, if you want to see some of the more adult stuff, you can.
Yeah, I'm saying, hey, it's right there. You know, you're consenting adults.
The guy does have a lot of fun drawing boobs whenever there's a busty chick in the series we write, is what I'm saying. That's going to do it. We will have, hopefully, Welcome to the Ballroom next week. That's going to do it for us here on Manga Recap.
Yes. Any New Year's resolutions on your part, Nick?
Nope.
Fantastic. You're like, more quality end of shows. I'm gonna really take my improv up a step this year, I feel.
So, week 2. Hey, Nick, you have anything that you want to say at the end of the episode this time? Nah.
Week 3, Nick, anything this week? N-word.
What?
I'm like, all right.
What? I thought we were done already. Haven't we stopped recording? Oh,
I look over, you're on your cell phone, like, huh? What? Are we still doing this? Oh my God damn it, Nick.
Nick, why'd you take your shirt off? Oh, the camera's still on!
Happy 17, everybody. We'll catch you next time.